This video is part one of a two-part series on balancing drive shafts or propeller shafts in vehicles rather than sending the propeller shaft out to be balanced. So the drive shaft or propeller shaft, some manufacturers call it one, some call it the other, will sometimes have an imbalance problem that will need to be corrected. And you should never attempt balancing the propeller shaft unless you've eliminated the run out, the wobble that can be in propeller shafts due to incorrect assembly or manufacturing or possibly damage from driving down the road. So to balance a drive shaft or propeller shaft in the vehicle, you are going to need, well, there's a couple of ways to do it. One way is with the electronic vibration analyzer, the EVA or the EVA2 that we have right here. Another way is with the Pico NVH diagnostic kit with the optional accessory for driveline balancing. And in this episode, I'm going to show you how to use the EVA2 or EVA. They both work the same way to balance the propeller shaft. So I have the EVA2 here hanging just from a couple of S-clips like you use to hang brake calipers from. And I've got the accelerometer, the sensor, the vibration sensor for the EVA plugged into channel or input A. And then I've got it right here placed at the bottom of the axle housing by the pinion, front of the pinion nose, with the word up on the sensor facing up. By the way, you need to make sure that your sensor is calibrated. There's a calibration procedure to make sure that the EVA knows which side is up on the sensor itself. And anytime you get a new sensor or put the sensor in a different input or use the sensor with a different EVA, you need to do that calibration. Otherwise, the timing light that we're going to use to shine on the bottom of the propeller shaft here will not shine where it's supposed to. Normally, it will shine when everything is calibrated correctly on the light spot where we are going to add weights to the propeller shaft to make it or to counterbalance the imbalance. But if your sensor isn't calibrated right, it might be shining on the heavy spot and you'll be adding weight where it is not needed. So be sure to go through that calibration procedure. I have a separate video on YouTube on sensor calibrations. There's two of them for the EVA or the EVA2. Now, so you've got to have the EVA with the vibration sensor. You're going to need a timing light of some sort. This one came with the EVA kit years ago, but you can use any timing light. A timing light like is used to set the timing on old engines that had distributors. There are still timing lights available, and I have a snap-on one here that I've used at the university, and it works just fine. But we're going to use the one that came with the EVA. Now it has, like any timing light, it has an inductive pickup that on the engine went over the number 1 cylinder spark plug to set the timing, and it would clip around the spark plug wire. But on the EVA, there's a little loop of wire at the top here. I'm just going to put it around that loop of wire and close it, and that loop of wire is going to be used to trigger the timing light at the appropriate time when we are trying to balance the propeller shaft. So I've got the timing light. It's a 12 volt timing light, and so I've got it powered up just off of a jumper box here on the floor. Okay, the next thing we're going to need to do is up here on the propeller shaft. We need to make some marks, because when we're shining a timing light on a propeller shaft and it's blinking as this is rotating about 2500 RPM, you need to be able to tell where it is, where it's shining. And obviously on a shaft that's rotating, you can't tell unless you've got some sort of recognizable marks that are there. And so what they recommend is to make 4 evenly spaced marks with the or around the propeller shaft. And so what I do is I just go off of each bearing cap. So I'm just going to draw a line straight across here on the bearing cap. So we'll just have a line coming right there, and I'm going to label that line number 1, and then we'll repeat this to where we have 4 lines. So there's number 1. We'll center that the best we can. It does not have to be dead on exactly in the center of that cap, but it needs to be close. So this is number 2. Be sure to number them. This is number 3. And it's always a good idea to mark the relationship of the propeller shaft right here to the pinion flange U-joint cap. And this is number 4. And I'll just put number 4 over here that it's lined up with. So unless you ever need to remove the propeller shaft, you can put it right back where it was, because out of the factory they match mount these propeller shafts. Every propeller shaft with the U-joint as centered as it can be in there has a little bit of a run out, a little bit of wobble as it rotates. It does not rotate on a perfect axis. It wobbles up and down a little bit, and there's a maximum amount of run out that's allowed, and you must fix the run out first before you attempt to balance a propeller shaft, because the run out can cause a vibration even if the propeller shaft is balanced. Balancing does not necessarily fix vibrations. It only fixes first order vibrations, which are vibrations that occur 1 shake per revolution. Okay, so we've got these 4 evenly spaced marks now on the propeller shaft. As we shine the timing light, as this is as it's rotating, we will be able to tell, is it shining between 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4, or 4 and 1. And that is where we are going to add balance clamps. So I've got 2 hose clamps here. 2 hose clamps. And before you use them as balance clamps, you need to put them around the propeller shaft, snug it up, and see how the length of this band here stops right there pretty much at the head of that clamp. That's because I cut it off. It used to be longer. I've probably cut off an inch and a half of this band. We don't want excess band sticking out past the clamp head, because it'll bend and fling outward as the propeller shaft rotates. And so we are going to use up to 2 hose clamps Each of these clamp heads weighs half an ounce, or about 14 grams, and we will use either one or up to two of these to counterbalance whatever imbalance might be on the propeller shaft, provided it's not a severe imbalance. Now, since each of these weigh 14 grams, if we put both of them on the propeller shaft right next to each other, that's 28 grams, roughly 1 ounce of weight. If we put them exactly opposite of each other, 180 degrees apart, then they cancel out each other. That's like having 0 ounces of weight or 0 grams of weight there. So if they're next to each other, that's 28 grams. If they're apart 180 degrees from each other at 0 grams, that means that somewhere in between here, we go from 28 grams to, let's say, maybe they're spread 27, 26, 25, 24, 23, clear down to 0. So we can use 2 clamps and spread them apart to equal weight less than the 2 clamps, or even less than the 1 clamp by itself. And I'll show you how that works if that's a little confusing to you. But first, let's find out where the light spot is on the propeller shaft where we want to start the imbalance, or the propeller shaft balancing. And to do that, we need to set up the vibration analyzers. So let's zoom in here on the electronic vibration analyzers screen. Here we go. All right, to get to the proper screen to where we can trigger the timing light to show us where to add weights on the propeller shaft, we have to not go to the auto mode. We've got to come down to the normal mode. So I'll hit the down arrow once and hit enter, and that takes us into the normal mode. And while we are in the normal mode, let me back out here just a little bit. There's a strobe button off to the right here. You hit strobe, and now let me zoom back in. It asks us, do you want to use the low range 35 to 45 hertz? And what they're talking about is the vibration frequency of the propeller shaft. Well, I forgot, and let's just do it right now, to change from hertz to RPM. So I'm going to hit exit and get back out of the strobe mode. There's an RPM hertz button right over here. I'm going to hit that and go to vibration shakes per minute rather than shakes per second. And the reason I do that is it makes more sense to me. I can make sense of this in my mind. If I know the engine is turning at 1700 RPM and the propeller shaft is turning at 2400 RPM, and I pick up a vibration that matches 2400 RPM, well, that's a direct match in my mind to me. But if I picked up a vibration that said 40 hertz, that's not a direct match. So 2400 RPM divided by 60 seconds is 40 hertz. And that just doesn't make any sense to me. So once again, we're going to, we've changed it to RPM. Now we'll hit the strobe button, and it's going to ask us, do we want to use the low RPM range for the propeller shaft? So this means the rotational speed of the propeller shaft, not the engine RPM. So this vibration occurs with the propeller shaft around 2400 RPM. So I'm going to answer yes. But if I answer no, let's just see what other options there are. If we answer no, we've got a medium range of 2700 to 3300. If I say no again, then we've got 3300 to 3900. And no again, we're back to our low range. And so I'm going to say yes. Okay, so now the screen reads, strobe signal level too low, strobe frequency not available, low range active, 2100 to 2700 RPM. So that means it's waiting for the vibration sensor here on the bottom of the axle housing to pick up a vibration of 2100 to 2700 RPM, which is propeller shaft speed. How do I know that's propeller shaft speed? Because I used the Vibrate software, and for the diagnosis on this vehicle, we picked up a 2400 RPM vibration at about 1700 engine vibration, and that matched a P1, a first order propeller shaft speed related vibration. And I'll have a separate video on how to use the Vibrate software to determine that. But for propeller shaft balancing, you need to know the rotational speed of the propeller shaft while it's vibrating. Okay, so let's go back in here. The strobe signal level will be the amplitude level. This will be a number between 0 and 9, and the higher the number, the more severe the vibration is. And so we want to see what it is to begin with, and then we want to reduce it by adding these hose clamp balance weights. Alright, I'm going to add some extra weight to this propeller shaft to make it have an imbalance, because it does not have one. So I've just got some tape weights right here I'm going to install just at a random location. And of course the tape weight won't stay on, it'll fling off and kill you. And so I'm going to hold that down with a hose clamp. This is just for demonstration purposes. Do not do this at home or in your shop. This is just to throw it way out of balance so that I can show you how to counterbalance with the hose clamps. And we got to get the hose clamp band as straight as possible. Okay, do it again. So let's see what kind of amplitude or signal level we get off the sensor now. Oops. Okay, so we have a strobe signal level of 6 and 7. So that's a severe vibration. And so now we are going to take the timing light and shine it at the propeller shaft at the 6 o'clock position. So let me see if I can get it to where you can see where it actually shines. So here's the timing light. I'm putting turning it on, and let me zoom in, see if you can see what number it's shining on or where it's shining. Seems to be shining right before the number 1. So it's between the 2 and the 1. And we have to line that right up with the word up on the sensor. So it's between the 1 and the 2, but a lot closer to the 1, kind of by that smaller weight that the factory added on. Okay. So I think it was shining. Here's the 1 that we saw. Here's the 2 that we saw. It was between here and this weight. And so right here, right in that area right there, that's our starting point for adding weights. And the weights we are going to add are hose clamps. And so we're going to make a mark here now, and we will move the hose clamps relative to this mark from this point forward. Okay, so let me get a little measuring ruler here. I'm just going to kind of go halfway between that one and that weight is where the light appeared to be shining the most. So I'm going to put a line across there, and I'm just going to call that the light. L-I-G-H-T. That's the light spot. And that's also where the timing light was shining. And that's where we need to add weights. So we are going to start by adding a single hose clamp. So here's a single hose clamp. And I'm just going to put that hose clamp right over that line where the light was shining. And this is a hose clamp we've trimmed already, so we don't have excess strap hanging off the edge of the clamp. I'm going to bring that right in close here. I'm just going to center that clamp. As you can see here, I've centered the clamp over our line that we've labeled light. And then if we have to move it, we'll move it in relation to this line. Okay, so we had a strobe level of 6 and 7 before putting this balance clamp on. Take it back up. So now let's see what our strobe level does. All right, our strobe level has gone down from a 6 and a 7 down to a 5, 6, 5, 4, 6, 5. So we have improved it a little bit. Okay. So now we need to add more weight because that wasn't enough. We need that signal level as low as we can get it. In the instructions that came with the EVA, it says a 3 or below is considered balanced, but I think wherever you're at and you can't feel the vibration anymore is where it's balanced. All right, notice I've also put a label on the clamp reminding other people not to remove this clamp. It's there for balance reasons. So here's our balancing clamp. Here's the clamp I put on to cause the vibration. Obviously that's not going to be there in real life. But now I'm going to come back over here where we put this single hose clamp, and let's put another one. By the way, the propeller shaft rotates in this direction, so it's best to not have the head of the propeller or of the hose clamp facing in the direction of rotation, just in case it hits something. We don't want it to loosen up. All right, I'm just going to put those two right next to each other. Now, what we're going to, oops, I don't have them, don't have the bands very aligned up there. There we go. You got to watch those bands. They get tilted one way or the other. If by adding this, the strobe level if the strobe level does not decrease sufficiently, clear down to a 3 or a 4, or if it doesn't reduce it, then we're going to have to shine the timing light again and see if it is telling us that we've added too much weight. And it'll tell us that because it'll quit shining where the light was shining and it'll shine somewhere else. So putting one clamp on improve things. Putting 2 clamps on might be too much, and in that case maybe the light would start shining on the other side of the propeller shaft. We'll find out here. We will also look at the strobe or the signal level. Okay, take it up again. So let's see what we end up at. Oh, look at that. We took it from a 7 down to a 2, 3, 4, 3, 2. We've reduced it significantly by adding those 2 clamps. Okay. Let me zoom back out here. Okay, so we started with our initial imbalance that I added here with this yellow headed hose clamp and a tape weight underneath it. I added 3/4 of an ounce of tape weight, 1 ounce of, or a half ounce of hose clamp, so that's 1 1/4 ounces of weight I added. Here on the other side, but not exactly opposite, we've added 2 hose clamps of a half ounce each. That's 1 ounce of, or 28 grams of counterbalance. Now occasionally what you will see is when you put 2 clamps on here, the amplitude level will not go down. It may actually go up, and the timing light might start shining in a different direction. And if that's the case, then we need to start spreading these clamps apart evenly. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. So I've loosened the clamps, and if I put 1 clamp at the bottom and 1 clamp exactly opposite of it, 180 degrees apart, just like that, they counterbalance each other, and that's equivalent to 0 ounces of weight. That's like not having any hose clamps on there at all. And then when we had both hose clamps right next to each other here on the original line where the light was shining, that's like having 1 ounce of weight. We want to spread them apart evenly, and you can just start by picking some dimension. Let's get a flexible ruler here, and we'll just go, let's say 30 millimeters from our light line up. So I'll make a mark up there, and another 30 down, so that'd be 60, so that's pretty much right there. So we'll have 1 hose clamp right here at 30 millimeters down, and I just picked 30. It could be any amount. We just need it to be an equally spread amount away from our center line. So I'll tighten that one up at 30 millimeters above. Okay, so you see what I've done? I've got, here's our light line where the strobe light was shining. I've moved this hose clamp up 30 millimeters. I've moved this one down 30 millimeters. And that has reduced the overall amount of weight. And then you would run the propeller shaft back up at the same speed, see if the vibration got better. If it still wasn't good enough, like this was still too heavy, then you could spread them apart even more and just keep playing with the spread. But it needs to be an equal distance from this original point where the light was shining. You keep spreading these clamps until you get your signal level down to a low number, lower than a 3, and of course, most importantly, with the vibration gone. So the electronic vibration analyzer can be used to balance propeller shafts. It's a much better balance because you are balancing not just the propeller shaft, but you've got the pinion gear, the pinion flange, the entire propeller shaft, clear up where it goes into the back of the transfer case or the transmission, not to mention the output shaft. Everything that rotates the same speed there is balanced by this procedure. Okay. I think that is all. Have a good day.